It started with silence. Not the kind of silence that comforts you. The kind that strangles a room full of people who don't know where to look. 1 minute. Meghan Markle was sitting under the blazing stage lights at the Fortune's most powerful women's summit. Her posture perfect, her smile rehearsed. The next, the editor-in-chief of Fortune magazine, Alyson Shontell, calmly removed her mic, stood up, and walked off stage. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The audience froze. Cameras stopped clicking. You could almost hear the collective gasp, a ripple of disbelief running through the high-profile crowd. Meghan blinked, unsure if it was part of the act. It wasn't. Alyson didn't look back. She didn't need to. And that's where this story begins, with one of the most public, humiliating walkouts in Meghan Markle's post-royal life. But here's the thing. This wasn't just an awkward interview gone wrong. It wasn't just about a misunderstanding or a moment of ego. No, what unfolded at that summit in Washington, D.C., was a mirror reflecting something much deeper. Something Meghan had been running from ever since she traded Buckingham Palace for the Hollywood spotlight. Because in that moment, it wasn't just Alyson Shontell walking away from Meghan Markle. It was Fortune, the media institution that had once celebrated Meghan as a modern feminist icon, silently declaring they'd had enough. Enough of the narratives. Enough of the rehearsed vulnerability. Enough of the contradiction between what Meghan says she stands for and what she actually does when the cameras roll. But let's rewind a little. The Fortune Summit wasn't supposed to be a battlefield. It was meant to be a celebration of power, influence, and women breaking barriers. CEOs, founders, visionaries, the kind of crowd Meghan once dreamed of impressing. The theme that year? Authentic leadership in a changing world. How ironic, right? When Meghan took the stage that morning, she believed it was her chance at redemption, a way to reclaim her voice after months of criticism, after the Spotify debacle, after the rumors of Netflix frustration and royal family estrangement. Her PR team had carefully curated every detail. The lighting, the talking points, even the phrasing of her answers, soft, elegant, and unmistakably humble. The goal was simple: charm the media elite, rebuild credibility, and remind the world why she was still the Duchess of Sussex. But what no one expected was that Alyson Shontell, Fortune's youngest ever editor-in-chief, wasn't interested in a PR performance. Alyson had a reputation for asking the questions others were too afraid to. She wasn't impressed by titles. She wasn't dazzled by fame. And when she agreed to moderate Meghan's segment, insiders say she made one thing clear: the interview would be unscripted. That's where the tension began. Because Meghan's team, meticulous, protective, and image-obsessed, wasn't built for unscripted moments. They preferred control, predictability, perfect lighting, perfect sound bites, perfect applause. But Alyson? She preferred honesty. So when Meghan sat down that day, in her immaculate beige outfit, a designer clutch resting beside her, the Duchess smiled perfectly in place. She didn't realize that her biggest challenge wouldn't come from the audience or the press. It would come from the woman sitting right across from her. Now imagine this. The stage is glowing. The backdrop reads Fortune Most Powerful Women Summit. The audience is filled with executives, investors, journalists, and global figures, all watching intently. Meghan begins her story. She talks about resilience, about breaking barriers, about using one's voice. Her tone is soft yet firm, her words carefully chosen. The audience nods politely. But then, Alyson leans forward. Her expression changes. She interrupts gently. Not with aggression, but with surgical precision. Meghan, you've spoken beautifully about empowerment, she says, her voice steady. But some critics argue that your advocacy feels performative, that it's more about image than impact. How do you respond to that? The air thickens. Meghan freezes for half a second, just long enough for the cameras to capture it. She laughs lightly, deflects, compliments the question, talks about misunderstandings and media narratives. But Alyson doesn't move on. She presses again. Right. But some of those narratives come from people who once worked with you, colleagues, producers, even friends. Are they all wrong? This time, Meghan's smile falters. Her voice sharpens. The charm cracks. And right there, in front of hundreds of powerful women, something shifts. It's no longer an interview. It's a confrontation, a clash of authenticity versus performance. Because Alyson's questions weren't about Meghan's success. They were about her truth. And that's when the silence began to grow. Thick, heavy, until Alyson did what no one expected. She stood up, calmly, gracefully, unapologetically, and she walked away. Now let's pause there. Because the internet saw the clip, but what it didn't see was what happened seconds before that moment. The quiet exchange between Alyson and the event producer. The subtle signal that said, enough. The tension backstage, where Meghan's team whispered furiously into earpieces, trying to control damage in real time. And the audience, some confused, others nodding in quiet understanding, realizing they were witnessing something extraordinary. You see, this wasn't just about one woman walking off a stage. It was about integrity standing up to influence. For years, Meghan Markle had managed to bend narratives to her will, through interviews, documentaries, and curated appearances. But this time, the narrative bent back. And what's fascinating? The person who drew that line wasn't a rival royal, or a critic, or a tabloid reporter. It was another woman, a journalist who believed that power without accountability means nothing. Now here's where things get interesting. Sources close to Fortune say Alyson's decision to end the interview wasn't impulsive. In fact, it was the result of tension that had been brewing for days behind the scenes. Apparently, Meghan's team had made requests before the interview, which questions to avoid, which topics to emphasize, even which words to use when addressing her. The word Duchess, for example, was reportedly insisted upon. But Alyson refused. Fortune's editorial integrity couldn't be bought or bullied. And that, insiders claim, was the breaking point. Because when Alyson walked out that day, she wasn't just leaving Meghan on stage. She was leaving behind the performance, the layers of PR polish, the scripted empathy, the calculated charm. She was choosing truth over theatrics. And as Meghan sat there, alone under the stage lights, searching for words that wouldn't come, the cameras captured something she couldn't edit out later. Authenticity exposing artifice. Think about that for a moment. In a summit meant to celebrate the most powerful women, the real power wasn't in Meghan's royal title or her Hollywood aura. It was in Alyson's quiet defiance, in the courage to say, without saying, that influence means nothing if it's built on illusion. Now, here's where the story turns from uncomfortable to explosive. Because what followed in the hours after that walkout was chaos. Online, in the press, and even inside Meghan's own team. Clips of the moment flooded social media. Headlines screamed about Fortune's silent protest. And while Meghan's supporters rushed to defend her, others began asking the question she dreaded most. Has the world finally stopped buying the Meghan Markle narrative? And if you think that's harsh, wait until you hear what came next. Because Alyson Shontell didn't just disappear quietly after walking off that stage. She made one subtle move that sent shockwaves through both the media industry and Meghan's inner circle. And it all started with a single email. But that's for the next chapter. Because behind that email was a truth Meghan had spent years trying to control. And this time, no amount of PR spin could bury it. What Alyson knew would change everything. The lights were blinding, the applause rehearsed, and every camera in the room pointed toward one woman, Meghan Markle. She looked calm, radiant, even regal. But beneath that polished surface, tension simmered like a quiet storm waiting to break. Because the Fortune Most Powerful Women Summit wasn't just another speaking engagement. It was the event, the place where reputation, influence, and image collided under the weight of real power. This was the arena of CEOs, billionaires, media moguls, and changemakers who shaped global narratives, the kind of audience that doesn't applaud celebrity charm unless it's backed by substance. And that's where the contradiction began. Meghan arrived at the summit not as an actress, not as a royal, but as a self-branded global advocate. She wanted to be seen not as the Duchess of Sussex, but as the voice of modern women. Yet ironically, everything about her entrance screamed hierarchy, designer outfit, personal photographer, curated entourage. Even her team's whispered reminders, smile now. Adjust your mic, mention resilience, echoed like stage directions rather than inspiration. It was as if Meghan had forgotten the kind of crowd she was walking into. Because at Fortune, authenticity isn't a buzzword, it's currency. As Meghan's convoy pulled up outside the Washington, D.C. venue that morning, cameras captured every moment. The poised walk, the wave, the camera-ready grin. Behind the curtain, producers exchanged nervous glances. There had already been murmurs about Meghan's team being difficult. Requests had poured in days before. A preferred lighting angle, no audience questions, a pre-approved question list, and strict insistence that she be addressed as the Duchess of Sussex. But Alyson Shontell, the woman who would share the stage with her, wasn't interested in titles. Alyson was everything Meghan claimed to champion: young, ambitious, accomplished through merit, not privilege. Appointed as Fortune's editor-in-chief at just 35, she'd climbed the ranks through sharp storytelling and fearless journalism. Her reputation? Integrity first, image last. She'd interviewed world leaders, tech titans, and activists, and she'd never once allowed PR teams to dictate her tone. So when she heard that Meghan's camp was sending conditions, Alyson reportedly rolled her eyes. "We're not doing a royal interview," she told staff. "We're doing journalism." That one sentence set the stage for everything that followed. As the audience filled the room, anticipation buzzed through the air. Some came out of admiration, others out of curiosity. After all, Meghan Markle was still a global fascination. The Hollywood star who married into royalty, rebelled against the crown, and tried to redefine her own narrative. But whispers spread. People wondered, was this Meghan's comeback, or her last act? The lights dimmed. The stage glowed gold. Alyson Shontell walked out first, calm, professional, a faint smile playing on her lips. Then came Meghan, bathed in spotlight, dressed in understated beige that screamed expensive simplicity. They shook hands. The cameras flashed. For the first few minutes, everything went according to plan. Alyson began softly, letting Meghan ease into her rhythm. Questions about philanthropy, mental health, women's empowerment, all answered smoothly, almost mechanically. Meghan was in control. She leaned forward, smiled at key moments, dropped buzzwords like compassion, healing, and impact. The audience clapped politely, though not passionately. But something was off. Alyson could feel it, the distance between Meghan's words and her energy. It was too polished, too safe, too scripted. And then came the shift. Alyson looked down at her notes, hesitated for a moment, then glanced up. Her tone changed, slower, sharper, deliberate. "Meghan," she began, "you've spoken a lot about using your voice to inspire others. But critics say your message sometimes feels managed, that it's less about change and more about control. How do you balance authenticity with image?" You could hear a pin drop. Meghan blinked. Her smile held, but her posture stiffened. "Well," she began with a nervous laugh, "I think when you're in the public eye, people will always have opinions about authenticity. I try to stay focused on the bigger picture, service, not perception." It was a good answer, safe, elegant, but not satisfying. Alyson nodded, not moving on. "Right. But do you think sometimes that management of image, through production, PR, and narrative, risks overshadowing the cause itself?" That was the moment everything shifted. Meghan's eyes flickered. The temperature in the room dropped. She could sense where this was going, and she didn't like it. Her team, sitting near the back, exchanged frantic looks. One of them whispered into a headset. Meghan adjusted her seat, forcing a smile. "I think women should be allowed to define their stories however they choose," she said, voice tighter now. "And if that means being intentional about how that story is told, then that's part of empowerment, isn't it?" Applause, scattered and unsure. Alyson leaned back slightly, the faintest hint of irony in her smile. "Of course," she said softly. "But empowerment also means facing uncomfortable truths." That single sentence hit like a slap. Subtle, controlled, and devastating. It wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel. But it carried an unspoken message. You can't preach authenticity while silencing criticism. The tension became visible. Meghan's smile thinned. Alyson looked composed, almost serene. And the audience, caught between fascination and discomfort, didn't know which side to take. Now, here's what most people didn't see. While the cameras focused on the stage, a quiet storm was brewing backstage. Event staff whispered. Fortune's communications director stepped out of the control booth. Meghan's PR manager, visibly panicked, sent a flurry of texts. "Stop this line of questioning. Redirect now. End it if needed." But Alyson wasn't reading from a PR script. She was following her instincts. Because what she saw on that stage wasn't empowerment. It was performance. And the crowd sensed it too. Meghan's charm, once magnetic, now felt defensive, each word more rehearsed than the last. She used phrases like creating space for dialogue and redefining narratives, but avoided direct answers. The longer she spoke, the thinner the illusion became. Meanwhile, Alyson stayed composed, her calm demeanor silently dominating the exchange. Then came the moment no one expected. Alyson asked one final question, not on the pre-approved list, not filtered through Meghan's PR. Would you ever sit down with the British royal family again? Not for the cameras, not for a deal, but just to talk. The audience collectively held its breath. Meghan froze. Her lips parted slightly. I think healing takes time, she said after a pause. And sometimes, silence is part of that journey. It was meant to sound wise. But to everyone watching, it sounded evasive. Alyson held her gaze. The silence stretched longer than comfort allowed. Then, quietly, she removed her mic. Without a word, she stood up, smiled briefly, and walked off stage. At first, the audience thought it was a glitch. Maybe a technical issue, maybe a break. But then it hit them. Alyson wasn't coming back. The editor-in-chief of Fortune had just walked out on Meghan Markle. Meghan sat frozen, blinking in disbelief. For a few seconds, she tried to continue, a nervous laugh, a forced line about meaningful discussions. But the room had already shifted. You could feel the discomfort, the collective awareness that something monumental had just happened. The moderators backstage scrambled to cut to a sponsor segment. Meghan's team rushed forward, pretending nothing was wrong. But the damage was done. Because in that moment, the symbolism was clear. Power had quietly switched sides. Alyson, by walking away, had said what millions had been thinking but few had dared to say aloud. That Meghan's brand of empowerment had lost its authenticity. That perhaps, just perhaps, the world had grown tired of performance packaged as purpose. Later that night, as the clip went viral, Fortune's PR team issued no apology. No clarification. No spin. Just silence. And that silence spoke louder than anything Meghan had said on stage. Because in the realm of real power, in rooms like that summit, respect isn't demanded. It's earned. And Meghan Markle had just learned that lesson the hard way. But what no one realized yet, not the audience, not Meghan, not even Alyson, was that this single walkout would ignite something far bigger than a moment of awkwardness. Because behind the scenes, buried in the emails and whispers that followed, there was evidence, damning, undeniable, and dangerously close to being leaked. An email that would expose what really happened before the interview. An email that would show the world who tried to control the narrative and who refused to play along. And that email? It was about to surface. The hum of the stage lights was the only sound that dared to fill the silence. Everyone sensed it, that invisible tremor right before a storm. Moments earlier, the conversation had glided smoothly. Empowerment, leadership, legacy. But then the moderator, Alyson Shontell, leaned forward, her pen tapping the note card in her lap. One question sat there in ink, so dark it almost looked scorched. May I ask something that wasn't on the list? The sentence hung midair like an electric wire. The guest, a glamorous philanthropist named Marina Hale, a woman adored and doubted in equal measure, flashed her trademark smile. Of course, she said lightly, though her fingers tightened around the glass of water beside her chair. Alyssa hesitated for only a breath before firing. People admire you for speaking about truth and transparency, she began, her tone still measured. But some former colleagues suggest your message has become performance. That authenticity itself has turned into your brand. What do you say to that? There it was. The forbidden question. For half a second, the audience didn't move. Marina's smile froze, her mind racing through the hundreds of polished answers drilled by her media coach. None fit. Not this. A cough in the back row. The sound of someone shifting a chair. Then, silence again. Marina finally laughed, a soft, melodic sound that didn't quite reach her eyes. I think anyone who puts themselves out there will be accused of acting. That's the price of visibility, isn't it? The line drew a few nervous chuckles, but Alyssa didn't let go. She tilted her head, voice calm. Visibility is one thing. Control is another. Is there ever a moment when the story stops being yours? That cut deeper than anyone expected. Marina blinked, her pulse quickening. Control? She repeated, as if tasting the word. I think every woman deserves to control her own narrative. Alyssa's expression didn't change. Even when that narrative starts to control others. The air cracked. Someone in the second row exhaled audibly. Two camera operators exchanged glances. Marina crossed her legs, her poise wobbling for the first time that morning. This wasn't an ambush. It was a mirror. And for the first time, Marina didn't like her reflection. She adjusted the mic pinned to her collar, her voice now lower. Are you suggesting that I manipulate my message? Alyssa didn't flinch. I'm suggesting the public can sense when the performance overtakes the purpose. The words landed like glass shattering in slow motion. Marina's mind scrambled. Behind the stage curtain, her communications director mouthed something to the producer. Cut it, end it, redirect. But the producer simply shook his head. The interview had crossed into uncharted territory. For a brief instant, Marina's eyes softened, almost pleading. Do you know what it's like to be dissected by strangers? She asked. To have your compassion rewritten as calculation? Alyssa's gaze flickered, a trace of empathy, but only for a moment. Yes, she said quietly. But compassion that survives only under perfect lighting isn't compassion. It's choreography. The audience gasped. Marina's breath caught. Her carefully crafted armor, the warmth, the ease, the charm, cracked wide open. And that's when the entire conversation tilted from polite discourse into something raw, almost dangerous. She leaned forward. You talk about honesty, she snapped. But isn't it convenient for journalists to question authenticity when they profit from the spectacle of tearing people down? Alyssa didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. True, she said. But sometimes spectacle is born because truth has been replaced by image. It was brutal in its precision. The kind of line that slices without blood. The room was electric. Every journalist in the audience scribbled frantic notes. The event's social media feed was already erupting. Clips, reactions, whispers. Did she just challenge her live? Backstage, Marina's assistant paced, muttering, This is going off script. This is going off script. But on stage, Marina couldn't retreat. Not now. Pride wouldn't let her. So she smiled, a smile sharper than glass, and said, Perhaps that's the difference between us. I believe in telling stories that uplift. And I, Alyssa replied, believe in telling stories that are real. The applause that followed wasn't warm. It was conflicted, awkward, necessary, like thunder forced out of clouds that didn't want to rain. Marina laughed again, but it was brittle. You must have quite the reputation at Fortune, she quipped, attempting humor. Alyssa's eyes gleamed. Reputation only matters when it's earned, not bought. The moderator's calm refusal to play along left Marina momentarily speechless. The smile faded, and for a flicker of a moment, her real expression surfaced. A mix of anger, embarrassment, and something deeper, fear. Because she knew this clip would go everywhere. Cameras zoomed closer. The lights felt hotter. Her throat tightened. She needed to regain control. So she switched tactics. I came here today to inspire women, not to debate headlines, she said, steadying her tone. Let's remember the importance of kindness in conversations like this. Alyssa nodded politely but didn't respond. The silence that followed spoke volumes. Kindness or deflection? The audience could decide. Minutes crawled by. Marina tried steering the discussion back to her projects, but the energy had shifted permanently. What was meant to be a celebration now felt like an interrogation disguised as dialogue. The clock ticked toward the end of the segment. Alyssa glanced at her final card, the one she wasn't supposed to read. The one event organizers had marked with a red line. She read it anyway. Would you ever consider sitting down privately with the people you've criticized, without cameras, without a contract, just to listen? It wasn't cruel. It was human. But to Marina, it was betrayal. Her face drained of color. She whispered, almost to herself, That's not the question we agreed on. Alyssa stood the card upright on her lap, gaze unwavering. Sometimes the most important questions aren't the ones we agree on. Another silence. Longer. Heavier. Then, to everyone's astonishment, Alyssa unclipped her microphone. She didn't storm off. She didn't glare. She simply stood, offered a courteous nod, and walked toward the wings. The audience didn't know whether to applaud or breathe. Marina sat motionless, still smiling for cameras that now felt like mirrors reflecting her loss of control. Inside her, the realization sank like a stone. The narrative was slipping away, and no amount of polish could save it. Backstage, Alyssa's colleagues whispered. Some thought she'd gone too far. Others thought she'd just saved journalism in real time. Either way, nothing about that summit would ever be the same. By the time Marina left the stage, her phone was already buzzing. Dozens of alerts. Trending hashtags. Two conflicting worlds. One painting her as a victim, the other as a fraud. But the real story hadn't even begun. Because later that night, long after the crowd dispersed and the lights dimmed, a message appeared in Alyssa's inbox. No subject line. No signature. Just one line of text. You should know what she tried to change before the show. Attached was a forwarded chain of emails, and within them, a revelation that would set the media world on fire. It wasn't about one question anymore. It was about what the question uncovered. And what it uncovered would change everything. The stage lights hummed, but every heartbeat in the room was louder. For a long, impossible moment, Marina Hale sat alone on the Fortune Forum stage, staring at the empty chair across from her. The name card that read Alyssa Stone, moderator, was still there, tilted slightly, microphone cord dangling like a cut lifeline. No one moved. Not the cameraman. Not the publicist frozen behind the teleprompter. Not even Marina's personal assistant, who stood off stage gripping her phone like it might explode. Alyssa was gone. Just gone. And yet somehow, that quiet exit thundered louder than any argument ever could. What do you do when the person interviewing you simply walks away? When the world's gaze stays fixed on you, waiting to see if you crumble or claw your way back? Marina did what she'd been trained to do her entire adult life. She smiled. A brittle, polished, camera-ready smile. Well, she said lightly into the microphone, I suppose that's one way to end a conversation. A ripple of nervous laughter passed through the audience. But no one quite believed her composure. Not even Marina. Because inside, panic was sprinting through her veins. She could feel it, the subtle vibration of 1,000 live streams broadcasting her humiliation in real time. Every blink, every strained smile, every second of silence would be dissected by strangers before she even stepped off that stage. She glanced toward the wings, hoping to see Alyssa reappear. Nothing. Only shadows and a stage manager whispering into a headset. Marina's throat tightened. She took another breath, forced another line. Let's, keep the conversation going, shall we? But there was no conversation left to have. The moderator's empty chair said everything words couldn't, that something unsaid had ruptured between authenticity and artifice. The audience clapped politely, desperate to diffuse the tension. Marina bowed her head, pretending gratitude. Inside, she was breaking. Backstage was chaos wrapped in whispers. Alyssa's walkout had triggered a silent emergency, the kind event producers dread. Two PR reps argued near the lighting console, each insisting the other fix it. The executive director barked into a headset. Cut to sponsor reel. Cut now. But it was too late. The feed had already gone viral. Clips titled Moderator Walks Out on Marina Hale were flooding every social platform before the closing credits even rolled. And somewhere in the hallway, Alyssa Stone walked briskly toward the exit doors. No shouting, no drama, just a single expression of weary resolve. A security guard called after her. Ma'am, are you leaving the building? Alyssa nodded. The interview's over. That was it. No further comment. No statement prepared by publicists. Just 6 quiet words that would haunt Marina's reputation for months. Meanwhile, back on stage, Marina's mind spiraled between disbelief and fury. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. The summit was meant to rebrand her, to wash away months of bad press and paint her as the beacon of composure under pressure. She'd spent weeks rehearsing the tone of empathy, the pauses, the quotable sound bites. And yet, in less than 2 minutes, Alyssa had dismantled the illusion with nothing more than silence. Marina felt her pulse pounding against the thin microphone cord. Thank you, everyone, she said, voice trembling slightly. I appreciate the thoughtful dialogue today. The audience clapped again, out of politeness, not passion. She rose, smoothed her skirt, and walked off the stage as gracefully as possible. Cameras flashed, reporters whispered. She held her chin high until the backstage curtain swallowed her whole. The moment she stepped behind it, the facade shattered. Her assistant rushed forward. Marina. Don't, Marina snapped. Not yet. She yanked the microphone off her collar and tossed it onto a table. The click echoed down the corridor. What just happened? She muttered. Why did she leave? Who approved that? No one answered. Everyone looked terrified to speak. Finally, the event coordinator, a calm, silver-haired woman, stepped forward. Ms. Stone decided to end early, she said gently. She felt the discussion had reached its conclusion. Marina laughed, sharp, humorless. Reached its conclusion? It was barely halfway through. Her assistant handed her a phone. You're trending. Of course she was. She stared at the screen. Hashtag Alyssa walkout. Hashtag Marina meltdown. Hashtag authenticity test. Dozens of clips, each replaying the moment in excruciating slow motion. One frame captured the exact instant Alyssa rose from her chair. Another zoomed in on Marina's expression, a flicker of shock morphing into forced poise. Someone online captioned it, "When the performance ends, the truth walks out." Marina's stomach turned. She sank into a folding chair and buried her face in her hands. All she could hear was that final exchange, Alyssa's calm, surgical question echoing in her mind. Even when that narrative starts to control others, she hated how much it stung. Outside the venue, a crowd of journalists had gathered, sensing a scandal. Microphones extended like spears toward the lobby doors. Ms. Hale, did the moderator leave because of your comments? Was it staged? Do you plan to respond to her statement? Her driver opened the car door. Marina slipped inside without answering. Flashbulbs exploded through the tinted glass. For a moment, she just stared at her reflection in the window. The woman looking back didn't look powerful. She looked exhausted. Back to the hotel, she whispered. As the car pulled away, the first wave of online think pieces had already begun. The Atlantic, when authenticity meets PR, a walkout heard around the world. Media Lens, did Marina Hale's brand of empowerment finally collapse under its own weight? The Daily Chronicle, the smile that couldn't save her. Every outlet had a theory, every pundit an opinion. Yet none of them knew what was brewing behind closed doors, what was being whispered between producers and editors about the chain of emails discovered that very morning. At Fortune's downtown office, Alyssa sat at her desk, coat still on, staring at her computer. The forwarded email she'd received the night before sat open in front of her. It contained notes from Marina's PR consultant to the summit organizers, marked urgent revisions. Entire sections of the interview script had been redlined. Remove any reference to past controversies. Avoid questions about staff turnover. Do not mention philanthropic controversies. Address her as the Duchess of Compassion, branding term. Alyssa had read it twice that morning, fury simmering beneath her calm exterior. She'd joined journalism to ask questions that mattered, not to act as a prop for someone's redemption tour. That was why she'd agreed to the interview in the first place, to test whether Marina's message of authenticity could withstand an unscripted moment. Now she had her answer. A knock on the door. Her deputy peeked in. You okay? Alyssa nodded. I will be. But we're going to publish something. Not an exposé, just context. About the walkout. About integrity, she said simply. That night, Marina couldn't sleep. Every few minutes, she refreshed her social feeds, hoping the storm would fade. It only grew. Her publicist begged her to release a statement. Something heartfelt, he said. Apologize for any misunderstanding. Say you respect honest journalism. Marina's eyes hardened. Apologize? For what? Being ambushed. But even as she said it, doubt gnawed at her. Was it an ambush? Or had Alyssa simply refused to play along? By 3 a.m., a new headline appeared. Alyssa Stone breaks silence. Respect is a two-way conversation. No accusation. No venom. Just a single sentence that radiated quiet strength. The internet erupted again, half hailing Alyssa as a hero, half condemning her as unprofessional. But beneath the noise, one truth crystallized. The woman who walked away had somehow won the argument without speaking another word. Marina closed the laptop and stared into the darkness of her hotel suite. Outside, the city pulsed with distant sirens and streetlights. Inside, everything felt still, too still. For the first time in years, she wasn't sure who she was without the applause. By morning, her PR team gathered for damage control. Screens flickered with trending analytics, sentiment graphs, and crisis projections. One consultant sighed. We can spin this, but we need a distraction, something emotional, maybe a charity angle. Marina barely heard them. Her mind kept replaying Alyssa's exit, the deliberate calm, the refusal to engage, the power of quiet truth. What hurt most wasn't the humiliation. It was recognition. Somewhere deep down, she knew Alyssa hadn't done it out of malice. She'd done it out of exhaustion, tired of facades, tired of curated sincerity. That realization made the fallout sting twice as hard. She turned to the window, watching the city wake. "They'll forget by next week," she said softly. "They always do." But even as the words left her mouth, she didn't believe them. Because some moments don't fade. They echo. And this one was just beginning to echo louder. Later that afternoon, as Marina prepared to leave D.C., her phone buzzed again. A new message, unknown number. "You may want to see what's coming next." Attached, a screenshot of an email header. Sender, confidential@fortunedesk.com. Subject, the walkout, inside the interview that changed everything. Her heart stopped. Alyssa wasn't done. She was publishing her side. Marina gripped the phone until her knuckles turned white. The world was about to see what had happened behind that curtain. The scripts, the edits, the demands. She closed her eyes, inhaled sharply, and whispered to herself, "Control the story, Marina, before it controls you." But it was already too late. Because the story had escaped her hands the moment Alyssa stood up and walked away. And what that story would reveal next would make silence the most dangerous sound of all. It didn't start with a headline. It started with a whisper, a single message. No subject line, no signature, just a digital breath in the dark. You should know what she tried to change before the show. You ever read a sentence that makes the room feel colder? Alyssa Stone did. She was alone at her desk, coat still on, coffee untouched. The city drummed outside. The office hummed with fluorescent indifference. And on her screen, one forwarded chain, layered like sediment, time-stamped, re-forwarded, annotated, and finally, anonymized. No fireworks. No dramatic sound cue. Just words. Requests. Revisions. Red lines. At first glance, it looked harmless, standard pre-interview back and forth. Everyone does it, right? But then the details sharpened, like a lens clicking into focus. Please avoid questions about staff turnover. No references to prior controversies without pre-approved framing. We would prefer the guest be addressed by the brand designation the Duchess of Compassion in all stage materials. Remove the line about performative activism. Suggest coordinated impact instead. Final cut of the on-site edit must be mutually approved. Mutually approved. For a live conversation. Alyssa leaned back, the chair creaking. She rubbed her thumb along the edge of the trackpad. There it was, the invisible hand that tried to tilt the table. Not a demand. Not a threat. Something softer. Polite. Professional. Persuasive. The kind of language that dresses control in silk. Who sent this? Who leaked it? And why now? She reread the header. The forward originated from an internal event alias chosen for privacy. The trail before that zigzagged through half a dozen domains. Agency, brand, contracting, a boutique PR consultancy, with a name so tastefully vague it could be an aromatherapy candle. If you've never navigated a media leak, here's the part people misunderstand. It's rarely a grand betrayal. It's friction. It's frustration. It's the moment someone inside decides silence is more corrupting than risk. Alyssa lifted her eyes to the glass wall of her office. Beyond it, desks, screens, focus, hurry. Her deputy, Quinn, was conferring with comms. No one knew yet. She hadn't told them. She wasn't ready. Soon, Alyssa said. Then she slid the printed chain across the desk. But I need you to see this first. Quinn read without breathing. Their eyes moved the way you watch a fuse burn. This changes everything, they whispered. Or clarifies it, Alyssa said. Where'd it come from? Alyssa tapped the anonymized forward. From someone who sat in the rooms where tone is decided and language is laundered. They both knew what that meant. Not a hater. Not a troll. A participant. Do we publish? Quinn asked. Alyssa didn't answer. Not yet. Because to publish a thing is to become the thing. And she was still choosing what kind of thing this would be. Instead, she asked a different question. What's our responsibility? To the audience? To the event? To the person on that stage? Quinn's reply was quiet and immediate. Tell the truth. More gently than fury would like. More clearly than comfort would allow. The slow burn licked higher. There's an unglamorous part of leaks. The part with calendar alignment and server logs and the gentle, patient art of calling people who won't call you back. Alyssa worked the chain. She traced the earliest language to a junior account coordinator who'd pasted proposed comfort language from a shared document. She noted how that language thickened as it climbed the tree, every rung adding sheep's clothing to the wolf. Avoid softened to prefer. Prohibit became be mindful. The demands learned their manners as they ascended. By noon, the newsroom had questions. The business side had more. Legal wanted contextual patience. Comms wanted precision in the absence of speculation. Everyone wanted the one thing no one could have yet. Conclusion. Alyssa asked for 2 hours. She needed to call the sender. An anonymous inbox is a locked room with a cracked window. Sometimes, if you speak softly enough into the air, the room replies. She wrote, "Thank you for your trust. Before we decide anything, I need to confirm the chain is authentic and complete. Will you talk? Your identity will remain protected." No reply. 5 minutes. 10. 30. She closed her eyes, let the silence be what it was. When the reply arrived, it wasn't words. It was a new forward. A calendar invite from 2 days before the event. Pre-brief with moderator, final alignment. Attendees, event production, agency leads, principals PR, a single Fortune liaison. Attached, a PDF labeled Tone and Touch Points. The Marina Conversation. Alyssa opened it. 6 pages. Tasteful font. White space like a spa day. Bullets that smiled as they bit. Steer toward empathy narratives. Avoid relitigating prior press cycles. If necessary, reply with "I prefer to focus on what we're building now." Moderator to open with framing that celebrates visibility. Please position Marina as a listener leader. No audience Q&A. On any authenticity challenge, request nuance and move forward. Request nuance. Move forward. As if accountability were a traffic cone, you can simply go around. Alyssa felt the anger rise again. Hot, persuasive, vindicating. She didn't trust it. Anger simplifies too much. She put it down. She read it again, colder this time, lining each bullet beside the moments on stage where the veneer cracked. Here was the anatomy of a performance. Beautiful bones, immaculate angles, open palms that never meant to be empty. Now the ethics question sharpened. What do you do when you're holding proof that an authentic conversation was pre-negotiated to be anything but? When the person across from you is not a villain, just a world-class survivor of the modern attention economy. Do you torch them? Or do you light the room? Alyssa chose the room. She drafted the skeleton of a column, not a takedown, not a victory lap. A memo to the audience. A message to the industry. A mirror held without glee. What happened yesterday wasn't about a person, she typed. It was about a process. The gentle, relentless pressure to sand the edges off anything that might reveal what's real. She paused. She breathed. She deleted a sentence that almost purred. She refused to make beauty out of blame. Before she could continue, Quinn reappeared, holding a phone with 2 fingers the way you hold evidence. "You need to see this." On the screen, a niche media newsletter with a loyal, influential following. Subject line, "Something rotten at the summit?" Inside, a teaser. Hearing chatter that a major guest insisted on title language and topic constraints. Developing. The whisper had left the room. It was in the hallway now. "Clock's moving," Quinn said. "I know," Alyssa replied. "Let's move smarter." Across the river, Marina's team had sensed the same weather change. Not a storm yet. A pressure drop. "Someone is talking," her strategist said, jaw tight. "We can't let them be first." "First to what?" Marina asked. "Framing," he said simply. She sat on the edge of the sofa, elbows on knees. "Then we frame this," she said. "We say we asked for psychological safety. That's not manipulation. That's boundaries. We talk about being a woman in public. We talk about dignity." Her comms lead nodded. "We can do that. It will land with your base." "And with the rest?" Marina asked. A long silence. Finally, "With the rest, nothing lands. It detonates." She stood, restless. "There's something else," she admitted. "I got a text last night. No name. It implied, more is coming." "From who?" She shook her head. "It didn't say." The strategist paced. "We need to assume the moderator has it. Or someone near her." Another silence, crowded with the thing no one wanted to say. What if the leak looks fair? Not cruel gossip. Not tabloid bile. Just the quiet architecture of control exposed in natural light. Marina's phone buzzed. Another board member, another email, another "Are you okay?" She was suddenly tired of that question. Okay is a measurement in a vacuum. She lived in an ecosystem. She walked to the window. The city shrugged its skyline at her. She wondered, not for the first time, who she would be without polish. Then she wondered who would still come if she invited the world to meet that person. Behind her, her team debated adjectives. In front of her, the glass reflected a woman choosing between two kinds of vulnerability, the kind she could choreograph and the kind that doesn't ask permission. At Fortune, the slow burn reached the newsroom. Alyssa convened a tight circle, Quinn, a standards editor, legal, comms. She placed the printouts in the center like maps for a search party. No rhetoric. No heat. Just artifacts. This is not a vendetta, she said. It's a diagnosis. Standards read quietly, pencil tapping margin notes. Legal underlined 3 phrases and circled a 4th. Comms asked the question that matters. What do you want the audience to learn? That consent culture has been colonized by PR, Alyssa said. That calling limits comfort doesn't make them honest. That journalism isn't cruelty, it's care with teeth. They built the column like a bridge, engineered for weight, designed for crossing. Line by line, they folded in the context, pre-brief norms, legitimate needs for safety, the difference between trauma-informed framing and brand-informed sterilization. They refused to dehumanize the guest. They refused to sanctify the profession. When they finished, it read like a light turned on. Not flattering, not fatal, just undeniable. One last step remained, invitation. Alyssa typed the email herself. Marina, before we publish a column about process and expectations around yesterday's interview, we want to offer you space for a response. You have my number. She hit send. Then she waited. Across town, Marina watched the message arrive. She didn't open it right away. Time dilated. Rooms do that when truth knocks. Every object looks like it knows more than you. Her strategist read it over her shoulder. We can ignore. We can send a statement. Or he hesitated. Or you can actually respond. Not perform it. Answer it. She turned the phone face down. If I answer honestly, I lose. If I answer strategically, I lose slower. What do you want? He asked. She didn't know yet. She only knew the old way was crumbling. The choreography had been filmed from the ceiling. The marks were showing on the floor. She lifted the phone, typed, erased, typed again. I'll call in an hour. She sent it. In the meantime, the whisper turned into murmurs. A media watchdog posted a thread. Live events are being over-engineered. What you're watching isn't conversation. It's compliance with stage directions. An editor at a rival outlet quote tweeted, "Every day is a tug-of-war with PR over the right to ask a real question." A Women in Leadership forum countered, "Boundaries aren't control, they're care." Good faith arguments on both sides. Real pain, real fatigue, real need. The internet for once looked like a town hall, not a food fight. Then a smaller account posted something that cut through the discourse like a bell. A cropped screenshot from the Tone and Touchpoints PDF. Just one bullet. On any authenticity challenge, request nuance and move forward. No commentary. Just that. Retweets multiplied. Replies cascaded. The bullet point looked so civilized and sounded so hollow that people could hear the echo inside it. Alyssa stared at the screenshot and did the calculus in her head. Leak inside the leak. The source wasn't just with her anymore. The material had legs. Quinn burst in, breath quick. It's out. Not the full chain, just the ugliest line. We need to publish before it hardens into a meme. Alyssa nodded. Run the column. Include as much as we can verify and defend. Add a sidebar. How live events are shaped. No adjectives we can't cite. No heat we can't hold. And Marina? Quinn asked. Give her the last word if she calls in time. She did. Marina's voice, when it came through the speaker, was nothing like the summit. No stage oxygen. No velvet echo. I got your note, she said. I saw the screenshot. It looks bad. It looks incomplete, Alyssa replied, even. That's why I reached out. A pause. A breath. A choice. Here's the truth, Marina said slowly. I asked for boundaries because I'm tired. I asked for framing because I'm scared. And I asked for polish because the world punishes women who don't sand their edges down to half smiles. Another breath. But I also wanted to control you. I did. Because control makes me feel safe. And safety looks a lot like power when the cameras are on. The room, the little conference room with the scuffed table and the humming light, felt suddenly holy. Alyssa's voice softened. Thank you. I'm not a monster, Marina added. I'm a person who has gotten very good at surviving a system that rewards curation and punishes contradiction. And I think I forgot that honesty can feel like oxygen, even when it burns. Do you want any of that on the record? Alyssa asked. Silence. Then, yes. But not the part where I say I wanted to control you. Say I wanted predictability. It's true enough. You can say it. Alyssa replied gently. Or I can say that you said it. It lands differently. Another long hush. Fine, Marina said. Use my words. If I'm going to lose, let it at least be for telling the truth. They thanked each other. Imagine that, two people on opposite sides of a cultural tug-of-war, saying thank you in a room that smelled faintly of coffee and laser printer. When the call ended, Quinn exhaled like they'd forgotten how to, then remembered. That was rare. Human, Alyssa said. Let's honor it. They slotted Marina's quotes into the column, not as confession porn, not as trophy, as context, as the sound of a person choosing to breathe where a brand would have posed. They hit publish. Phones quivered on nightstands across time zones. Laptops flashed. The column didn't roar, it resonated. It read like a gentle alarm you can't ignore. The responses arrived in chords. Reporters. Thank you for saying the quiet part carefully. PR pros, the good ones, the brave ones, we can set guardrails without gagging the road. Activists. Trauma-informed isn't brand-informed. Stop confusing care with control. Readers. I didn't know events worked like this. I do now. And then, hours later, the thing no one anticipated, Marina's own post. No polished graphic. No logo. Just text. Yesterday hurt. Not because someone was unkind, but because someone was honest. I asked for comfort and tried to call it truth. I'm learning the difference. If I asked you to clap on cue, I'm sorry. If I asked you to trust me, I have to trust you with the whole story. More to come. Half the replies were cynical, because the internet is where hope goes to pay a tax. But the other half? The other half sounded like doors opening. And just when the slow burn felt like it had settled into warm light, when the leak had become lesson and the lesson had become language, another email arrived in Alyssa's inbox. No subject. No sign-off. A single attachment. Run of show_v7_final_final2.pptx. She opened it. Slide 3. Contingency. If moderator deviates, trigger segment B. Slide 10. If authenticity challenge arises, pivot to philanthropic metrics deck. Slide 12. A flowchart with dotted lines from audience discomfort to moderator reset to end early. Full control of post-clip message. End early. Full control of post-clip message. The slow burn had not ended in illumination. It had only just revealed the second fire. Because if this deck was real, and her source had not failed her yet, then the walkout wasn't just a rupture. It was a variable in someone else's plan. And if that's true, then who really left whom? But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The city didn't sleep the night the slides dropped. Newsrooms glowed like aquariums, screens pulsing, editors pacing, interns whisper-sharing links that vanished as quickly as they appeared. And in the middle of that sleepless web, two women stared at the same storm from opposite sides. Alyssa Stone, the journalist who had walked out. Marina Hale, the celebrity who had been left alone on stage. Between them lay 12 slides, and a single word that changed the tone of everything. Contingency. The file looked innocent. A conference deck wrapped in pastel branding, the kind you'd show to investors or board executives. But under the headings and bullet points, the truth was coiled tight. The show hadn't just been prepared, it had been ensured. Every possible rupture had a script. Every moment of spontaneity had a fallback slide. And buried in the metadata, one name appeared over and over. E. Rogers, Event Coordination and Client Relations. Alyssa had met Rogers once. A friendly handshake, a clipboard smile. Someone who blended into logistics. She remembered the eyes, though, watchful, restless, the kind of person who notices exits before entrances. When she forwarded the deck to her deputy Quinn, they replied with 2 words. Find Rogers. Meanwhile, across the river, Marina's suite had turned into a war room. Laptops, cold coffee, muted televisions looping her face. Her strategist slammed his fist softly against the arm of the couch. They're calling it the script within the script. The leak looks orchestrated. By whom? Marina asked. He hesitated. Someone close. These files weren't on public servers. They came from internal planning. Internal, she repeated. As in our team. Silence. Her assistant looked away. The air went still in that hotel suite, like the moment right before a confession. Marina folded her arms. Who had access? Everyone on pre-production, the strategist admitted. But only 3 people had editing rights. Me, your PR lead, and he didn't need to finish. Her eyes narrowed. Ella Rogers, she said quietly. The assistant nodded. Ella had been with Marina since the early foundation years, a logistics genius, calm in chaos, invisible in photos. She'd organized summits, arranged flights, managed donor dinners. The kind of employee who never spoke out of turn and remembered every birthday. Until now. At Fortune's newsroom, Alyssa and Quinn tracked the breadcrumb trail. The PowerPoint's properties showed last modification by E. Rogers at thehgroup.com, a small events subcontractor, one of many used by Marina's management firm. Quinn tapped their keyboard, eyes widening. Look at the timestamp, 3 hours before the interview. So the deck we just saw, Alyssa murmured, was the final version in play when I walked out. Quinn exhaled, meaning they had a protocol ready in case you didn't comply. Alyssa leaned back. The anger she'd tried to bury returned like static. The slide titled Segment B, Moderator Deviation, replayed in her mind. It wasn't paranoia, it was pre-planned surrender. She whispered, almost to herself. They planned to spin my silence before I even earned it. At that same moment, Ella Rogers was standing on the curb outside the hotel, phone in hand, wind cutting through her blazer. She hadn't slept in 36 hours. Her voicemail was full, half from journalists, half from unknown numbers. She deleted them all and dialed a single contact labeled AS, personal. It rang twice. Alyssa's voice, calm, wary. Rogers. Ella swallowed. You got the slides. Yes. You need to understand, I didn't mean for it to explode like this. You leaked them? I sent them for context, not for chaos, Ella said quickly. I thought if you saw how much control there was behind the scenes, you'd walk out before they used you. A beat. Wind. Traffic. Alyssa asked softly, why me? Because you still tell the truth, Ella said. And because I was tired of watching her drown in choreography. Alyssa didn't speak for a while. Then, you realize this makes you the most wanted ghost in 2 industries. I know. Where are you? Nowhere safe, Ella replied. But that's not the problem. The problem is what's not in the deck. What do you mean? There's a second plan. One only her management saw. I couldn't access it. But it's real. They call it reversal. The call cracked with static, then cut. Alyssa stared at the deadline. The screen reflected her face, half determination, half disbelief. Back in the hotel suite, Marina watched her team collapse into damage control. Press statements, legal drafts, phone calls. Her strategist muttered about rogue employees and breach of confidentiality. Stop, she said suddenly. Everyone froze. Don't chase the mole, she continued. Chasing her makes me look guilty. Fixing this makes me look honest. Her PR lead frowned. And what's honest here? Marina stared at the ceiling. That I'm not the villain, and I'm not the hero either. I'm just tired of being a product. The room went quiet. Even the air conditioner seemed to hesitate. Then her assistant's phone pinged. A news alert. Fortune prepares follow-up investigation on reversal, file linked to Hale Foundation media strategy. Her blood ran cold. What's reversal? The PR lead asked. The strategist blinked. I've never heard of it, Marina whispered. Then someone wants me to. At Fortune, Alyssa pulled up the newsroom chat log. Quinn had already drafted the headline for tomorrow's piece. The betrayal within. How control turned on itself. Alyssa read it twice, then shook her head. Too loud, she said. This isn't a scandal. It's an autopsy. They toned it down. Facts first. Emotion implied. But the more she wrote, the more her gut whispered that Ella's warning meant the story wasn't finished, it was mutating. By midnight, she received another encrypted email. Same anonymous signature, same eerie simplicity. You're looking at the rehearsal. Wait until you see the show.